Welcome to one more Power of Three interview series. This is Roberto Monaco, and today I am super excited to introduce to you my friend Dr. Patrick Gentempo. Dr. Patrick, how are you doing?
I'm awesome, and thank you for having me here today, and I'm excited to have this conversation.
We're going to have a great time. Now, I saw Dr. Patrick Gentempo speak several times, and recently I saw him speak in San Diego, I think it was maybe 3 weeks ago, and I was blown away. I'm blown away by the information and the topic that you're about to discover in the next couple minutes. And I said, man, I got to have you to do an interview for our group because the information that you share in San Diego here was so valuable. Now, a quick background, Dr. Patrick, I'm sure he's going to tell us how he got started. But basically, Dr. Patrick Gentempo is the founder and CEO of Action Potential Holdings. He is often referred as the philosopher entrepreneur. What I love about this guy, he's a hardcore entrepreneur. He has built more than 12 companies. At one point, he built up a very successful technology company, international technology company, sold it, and then he has also a great TED Talk. I mean, the guy is just a stud, as you're going to see. So the topic that I want to, Patrick, discuss with us today is about philosophy, which people think philosophy, man, I hate philosophy in school, right? So why are we going to talk about philosophy? Well, you see. So make sure you pause what you're doing, get a pen and paper, because I promise you this information is about to change your life. So Dr. Patrick, talk to us or tell us, why have you decided to study, research, investigate, and most important, talk and teach and speak about philosophy for entrepreneurs?
Well, it's. I should probably start out by saying this. I do not have an academic background in philosophy, and I don't consider myself an academic philosopher. My education is professionally, I'm a chiropractor, and I guess it took a truck to hit me to kind of start me on this journey. All of us, I think, in our lives, we've had what we thought were these tragedies, these sort of inflection points that are completely disruptive to the direction we think we're going in life. And then it caused you to step back, pause, and change your direction. And in hindsight, these tragedies many times turn out to be blessings. I happened to be in New York City riding my bicycle on 8th Avenue. I was living in the city at the time. Okay. And I was cut off by a truck. And long story short, I went down under its wheels. It ran me over, broke my leg in a couple of places, and I was kind of messed up. And back then, we didn't wear helmets, on our heads when we were riding bicycles, so I hit my head pretty hard. And I was laid up for a while. So a friend had brought over a book, a big, thick book that I would never read because I'm sort of ADD and I don't have patience for reading long books. And I said, where am I going? I was feeling kind of depressed. And this book happened to be a book that most entrepreneurs are familiar with called Atlas Shrugged. And the book is a novel, but it's a genre of writing or literature that's referred to as philosophiction, where an entire philosophical system is kind of weaved into a fictional story. And I started to relate so much to what was in there that I went further to explore some of the work by the author Ayn Rand and some of the nonfiction works, and I started to get into this world of philosophy. And the thing that is interesting about philosophy, and instantly from there, I just started reading, consuming, teaching, it became my life.
Okay.
So what the interesting thing was, and the distinction is that when most people hear the term philosophy, it conjures up images like old guys in robes walking around in ancient Greece, or maybe academics in ivory tower institutions. They don't really think of philosophy in the way that I'm proposing it, as a practical thing that a human being can hope to embrace to improve their life. As a matter of fact, my contention is philosophy is the most practical thing an individual or a business can hope to embrace to improve their circumstances. And so I look at philosophy, so I would consider myself a practical philosopher.
Okay.
I look at philosophy as literally a development tool to help increase our effectiveness in what it is that we're trying to accomplish in our lives. And in part, with that, you might say, well, why or how is philosophy a practical tool? And the answer is, in part, that when you have contradictions in your basic philosophical premises, the only possible result is destruction, and the amount of destruction is relative to the level of the contradiction. So through philosophy, we can identify where our contradictions may lie, and the consequence of which is we get to grow and develop and evolve and become more effective at what we do.
So the first question that I had, which leads to a little bit of what I just covered, why is philosophy? Because if you ask entrepreneurs in our community, have 30 plus industries listening to us right now, and they'll be thinking, why should I care about philosophy? And you said it, you kind of answer, because if you have contradiction, then you won't be successful. So I want us to break down question number one. Why is philosophy so important for us? Can you expand on contradiction? If you have contradiction, then you won't be successful. Can you expand on that point, please?
Yeah, so let's start here. You have, when I say you, I'm not saying just you, Roberto, everybody watching this, you have a philosophy.
Yep.
It's not a matter of should I have one or not. You have a philosophy. Your business, whether you're conscious of it or not, if you have a business, has a philosophy. So it's inescapable. So you have no choice about the fact that you have a philosophy. The only choice, as Rand described, the only choice you have is whether you defined your philosophy in a conscious, rational, and disciplined way, or let it accumulate, as she said, as a junk heap in your subconscious. So right now, your thoughts, your actions, your decisions, what you do every single day, the decisions you make about parenting, the decisions you make about employees, the decisions you make about finances, the decisions you make about spirituality, the decisions you make about health and fitness, the decisions you make about every important category of your life are driven from philosophical premises that you hold, the majority of which, unfortunately for most people, are unconscious and somewhat conflicting or contradictory. And that's why, if you've ever had the experience, well, my career is pulling me this way, and my parenting is pulling me this way, and my health and fitness is pulling me this way, and my personal life is pulling me this, and you start to see that you're pulled and tugged in competing directions, and you get stuck there. It's an indication that there are foundational contradictions in the way that you're approaching life, and there's no opportunity for you to resolve that and become more effective in what you're trying to do unless you can identify your philosophical premises, why you have them, and then decide what you're going to do about them. So in essence, the answer to the question, philosophy is pervasive. You have one. It's inescapable. And I will say that it's a very simple equation to say that, as you improve your philosophy or become more, what I'd say, congruent, more clear, and aligned in your philosophy, the more effective you become and the better outcomes you obtain. So I look at philosophy as an extremely, extremely practical tool for life and success, and I think every entrepreneur especially needs to clarify their philosophy.
One of the things that you said in San Diego during your presentation about philosophy for business people was that one of the philosophy that I can have it all. Remember that you said that?
Yeah, that's a premise.
The premise, and a lot of people, they'd be like, well, man, if I think entrepreneurs, I battle for many, many years. I had a career, had a job, I was working for Tony Robbins, then I'm going to open up a brand new business. So I'm putting, 14, 15 hours a day, just going crazy. And obviously, when you put all this intensity, other areas of your life start you neglecting, right? And so how does someone adopt a philosophy like I can have it all? Can I have a relationship? Can I have the body? And can I build up a successful? Consciously, I can, but do I believe that? Do I have a strong premise that that's possible? So I can see.
And we live from our premises, right? And so for that, and that's one example. Like I was speaking to a group of entrepreneurs at EO, Entrepreneur Organization.
Yep.
And that is basically, one of the summary statements I made. So often entrepreneurs, because of what they learned from their mothers, fathers, teachers, preachers, that hey, if you're going to have your own business, you're going to have to sacrifice your relationship. You're going to have to sacrifice sometimes your health. You got to sacrifice your time with your kids, etc. And if you accept any of those types of premises, then that becomes your view of reality. You live into that, meaning you don't try to even say that, hey, I can actually have these areas work for me, as compared to saying, well, in order for my business to succeed, other things have to fail. And you end up in an either-or determination. I lived that way for years. But then one day I started to examine my premises, and I drew a conclusion. I said, you know what? It might not be easy, but I can have it all. I can have a successful business, that is doing a lot of revenue with many employees and 9,000 clients on 6 continents is where we ended up. I can have a legendary romance with my wife. I can be an extraordinary father to my children. I can have exceptional health and fitness. I can be financially fulfilled and spiritually fulfilled. That I don't want to adopt the philosophy of sacrifice. That in order to have one thing, I have to sacrifice another thing. Do I have to have competition between the important values of my life? My relationship with my wife is very important. Do I have to choose between that and my business success?
No.
My relationship with my children is very important. Do I have to choose? My spirituality is very important. Do I have to choose? So I basically said, I'm going to adopt a premise now that says I can have it all. And once I adopt the premise, now I start taking action on the premise saying, okay, I'm not going to go for sacrifice. I'm going to go for figuring out the formula for how I can have it all. It doesn't mean that every day is payday and every day is things go well. No, you got to crawl through a lot of crap and you got to deal with a lot of challenges. But because the premise is this can happen, that's a possibility in life. Now my purpose changes toward it, my actions change around it, and my outcomes, are much better.
So maybe I can talk about the question number 2 here. That I think a lot of people I got confused in the beginning before our talk. Is what is the difference between philosophy and purpose? Because that's something you start speaking, and I'm like, okay, man, the word philosophy and purpose. Can you elaborate on that? Our question.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought this one up because it's, I think, a radically important distinction. I'm a fan of purpose. One of the businesses I started was called On Purpose. We're a purpose-driven company. So it's not that I have a very strong pro-purpose bias. What makes us different than any other form of animal on the planet is the fact that we can choose a purpose. A dog can't choose a purpose for its life. If a kid, it probably wouldn't be living with you. Some people get it. Dog lovers, so they can fit that. If cows could choose a purpose, McDonald's wouldn't be in existence. So other animals can't choose a purpose. Human beings, we are conscious. We have abstract conceptual capacity. We can choose a purpose. So with that, the question that nobody really brings up that I see out there at least is, well, where does purpose come from? See, my premise is you don't just get hit by a purpose stick and then suddenly you have a purpose. Purpose emerges from your philosophy. In other words, philosophy in its first 3 branches, metaphysics, epistemology, and ethics, basically asks the questions, where am I, how do I know, and what should I do? So purpose emerges from the 3rd branch of philosophy, which is ethics. And ethics provides a human being with a code of values and therefore will be a guide to your actions. And then those actions that you choose, once you have values that are established, from that you'd say, well, if these are my values, then this is my purpose that I want to choose, that I'm going to act upon in my life. Now, you can have kind of a global purpose, that's your life in general, and then you can have sub-purpose. My purpose as a parent is this, my purpose as an entrepreneur is this, my purpose as a spouse is this, and you can kind of, have these sub-purposes, if you will. But ultimately, what people don't speak about, at least not enough in my mind, and what I'm trying to bring to the forefront of people's minds, is that one of the most radically important attributes of having a philosophy is that it can help you clarify your purpose, because purpose emerges from philosophy. You don't start with purpose. You start with philosophy, and then purpose is one of the things that emerge from philosophy.
That is very fascinating. I never heard that before. I've been self-developed for 13 years. I always, for some reason, the way I was trained or educated, or my connection was, you start from purpose, and now you're saying you start from philosophy. So that for me was a aha moment. So can you give some examples of people in your network, the people that know you coach, and you have a program for chiropractors, have a program for business owners? Can you give some, maybe 1 or 2 examples of people who they had contradictions before, and then they became super clear about their philosophy, and now they're producing better results?
Yeah, I can give several, but we'll do a couple. And just to be clear, I have programs and so on. Personally, I don't coach personally, although within my programs we have forums that, and open office hours where I interact with people there. But I don't do one-on-one coaching. It's not a service I offer. So examples, just to give you some maybe easy ones to identify. Chiropractor, just for example, my profession. I've worked in multiple entrepreneurial realms, but chiropractic is where the majority of my activity is because I'm a chiropractor. But in healthcare in general is a big part of my focus. So with a chiropractor comes to me and he said, my vision, what I want, and quite frankly, my stated purpose is to work toward a lifetime family wellness care practice. Meaning his business, he wanted the customers that he would attract to that business. You can translate this into any category of business. He wanted a certain type of customer, and he wanted to provide certain services. And those services were not around just fixing back and neck pain, which is kind of the limited scope of chiropractic. He had a more expansive view, saying, I wanted to have a lifetime family wellness care, because for me and my family, he would say, we get adjusted regularly. It's a lifestyle that we live, and it has completely transformed our lives, and I want to give that to other people. He said, but my challenge is that my whole practice is full of people that come in just for back and neck pain. And I said, okay. We were on a break at a program where I was lecturing, and I said, I don't have a lot of time to dig into this now, but give me a card, we'll follow up, maybe have a conversation. He hands me his card, and it says XYZ Back and Neck Pain Center. And I looked and I said, why would you call yourself a back and neck pain center when you don't want to have a back and neck pain practice?
That was his identity. Yep.
Yeah, life is pretty simple. You get what you ask for.
Yep.
I mean, it really is almost that simple. And he said, well, because that's what draws people in, and then I try to convert them.
Yeah.
I said, but you don't understand. Your philosophy is your brand. And if you're going to call yourself your brand back and neck pain, then why would you expect the business to be anything other than back or neck pain? I mean, it's such an obvious contradiction, that it's like, it's an easy one to see and to figure out. But ultimately, I think where people can really, figure things out is this: look at what their values are. I mean, every business needs to have their values, their core values. They should be identified, they should be clear, and every stakeholder in the business should understand them. And then you look at all the behaviors of the business and make sure that every action you take is congruent with the core values or congruent with the statement of purpose of the business. And it's not like there's right ones and wrong ones. In other words, let me put it this way: if that guy wanted a back and neck pain center, then calling himself a back and neck pain center would not be a contradiction. It'd be appropriate, it'd be congruent. But when you don't want to be a back and neck pain center, but you feel like it's impractical, basically, here's what they're saying in philosophical terms. There's a conflict between the moral and the practical. This is the right thing to do, but it's not very practical, so I do it this way because it's not practical. And when you have a contradiction between the moral and the practical, you have only two options. You can be moral but impractical, or you can be practical but immoral. I mean, which do you want to choose? I mean, I want to be moral, I want to do the right thing, and I want to make money.
Yep.
So the moral and the practical have to be one and the same. When you have a contradiction between the moral and the practical, what you're saying is you have two choices. You can be a liar or you can be a sucker. Choose one. So those kinds of contradictions need to be reconciled. Now, mind you, nobody's 100% contradiction free. It's an evolutionary process. You start where you are, but as you utilize philosophy as a tool for identifying and removing contradiction, little by little you keep improving, and you're always trying to move towards perfection, although you never quite get there.
It's just because I think now that you said that, I'm thinking, because let's say you have your goals, like whatever they are, and then you work really hard, your systems, everything towards their goal. When you hit it, then you have something else, and most likely my current systems or my current, right, they contradict at some level to those goals. Follow me? At some level?
Yes.
And that's why you gotta be upping your, I'm not saying upping your philosophy, but upping where you are to match that philosophy. That I get it.
I mean, it's identifying. You have certain goals, outcomes, values. Objectives, however you want to characterize them, and it's a matter of then looking at your actions, saying, are my actions in concert or congruent with what I'm trying to get done? For example, I see some people, CEOs of companies or entrepreneurs that are running, maybe a small company, and they're like, I just want to get more. One of my values is more freedom. I got in my own business because I want to have more freedom, more free time, etc. And I want to empower my employees. So a value would be empower your employees to make their own decisions, to help take control of the business, so you don't have to be that attached to the business, and you can work on the business rather than in the business, and all those other type of slogans that we hear. However, I look at the behavior of this person, and they're always swooping in to save the day. Always like, oh, there's a problem, so they swoop in and they got to fix the problem rather than let the employee do it. So literally, they have what we call in one of my holdings, business finishing schools, Superman syndrome. They say they want freedom, and they say that's their intended goal and their objective and what they want to move toward, and it's their value. But their actions completely contradict giving them freedom. So it's just another example of becoming extraordinarily conscious, and this is what it's all about. Being hyper conscious about your life, your philosophy, your values, what you're moving toward, and when you become very, very conscious of that, you start to recognize contradictions pretty quickly, and when you solve them, you start seeing how things get better.
I love that. So part 2 in our interview here, we talk about 3 quick tips that we can do, take some action today to move towards this place where our philosophy, the right philosophy, is guiding us to better life, better success. What is one idea, something that I can do to start today the process?
So, to start the process, I have one exercise that's not a small exercise.
Okay.
But I would start here. I would look at, let's say, the 5 important categories of your life, and I'll say them kind of slowly so people can write.
Okay.
One is you separate from the rest of the world. I'm talking about you personally, which would include like your health and fitness and those types of things. But you separate from other obligations.
Okay.
Second would be your relationship life, which would most likely be your spouse or significant other, and maybe your kids. But just look at your relationship life. Third would be your career, whatever that happens to be, whether you own your own business, you're working in another business, what have you. Fourth would be your financial life. And then fifth would be your spiritual life. So there's more categories than that, but those are 5, I think, key categories.
Okay.
What I would ask you to do as an exercise is to write down your top 2 to 3 values in each of these areas. So if you look at your you separate from the rest of the world, what are your top 2 or 3 values? An example might be my health and fitness. That's a clear high-end value for me. Stimulating myself intellectually. I mean, I'm just I'm not trying to put words in anybody's mouth, but to give you examples. So what are your top values for you separate from the rest of the world? What are the top values for your relationship? What are the top values for your career? What are the top values financially for you? What are the top values for you in your spiritual life? And when you look at those top, and if you can write down more than 3, 4, 5, 7, whatever is there, write them all down.
Okay.
But organize them so you have in priority. This is the most important value, the next most important value, next most important value. So it's in a priority order.
Okay.
And then my recommendation, and this is an hour's worth of a workshop that I would do, but the recommendation I would have is, now look across the top line values, the top 1 or 2 values in each category, and see where there's conflict between them. Because if what's driving you, and it's my favorite, not my favorite, but an important question to ask is, a 3-word question: what drives you? And that's your values, basically.
Yeah.
So if what's driving you in your personal life, let's say, is pulling you west this way, and what's driving you in your career is pulling you this way, you'll get to a point where you're going to be driving in opposing directions in these 2 dimensions of your life till you get to a point of what I call maximum tension, where you're stuck. And you can't go this way any further because this is pulling, and you can't go this way any further because this is pulling. Your career gets stuck, your relationship gets stuck, your health everything gets stuck. So now what happens if you try to force something in that system, it gets torn apart, and people get divorced, and people have heart attacks, and careers fail because they're trying to force a system that's at maximum tension to do something. Mm-hmm. And that's why, incidentally, why people learn stuff and they don't implement it, because there's no space in a life to do it when you're at maximum tension. It's the top impediment to entrepreneurial growth. Or what happens is you can identify your top values, see where there's conflict, and see if there's a way to line them up. And if you can line them up in a common direction, and you put energy into that system, boom, then you have a breakthrough.
If someone, how does someone, now here's the question is, how does someone, let's say I do this exercise, I have 5 categories, identify my values, I select my top 2 in each categories. And step number 3, as I'm going over them, I see there's a big contradiction. How do I eliminate that?
Again, I go back to, you radiate your problems with so much consciousness that they melt. So, and a lot of times it's easier than you think, and sometimes it's a little bit harder. But just to give you an example, so let's say that my health and fitness is a key thing for me, but I realized by the time I take care of the kids and I'm working 12 hours a day, and et cetera, and I start to realize I don't, I just haven't had time to get to the gym. I'm talking from personal experience here.
Okay.
You can't tell. And because I was a national karate champion. I was very athletic. I was into my fitness, my health, all that stuff. But then I became an entrepreneur, and I'm running businesses, and I'm traveling 150,000 miles a year, and suddenly I got kids, I got a wife, and I got, you got all the gotta, right? All the stuff you got to do. And I was like, and I stopped working out, and I keep thinking, I'm going to get to the gym. I'm going to get to the gym. But next thing you know, I start to say, I'm pretty deconditioned right now, and I'm almost like embarrassed, the way that I feel and look. So maybe I got it. So I took a look, and I said, you know what? This is an extraordinarily important value for me. And I keep pushing it away with the excuse that I'm too busy with the other things. Again, the premise being I can't have it all.
Yep,
so
got it.
I decided to shift my premise to I can have it all. And then as soon as I did that, I said, so what can I do? Well, my old impression of myself was I'm not a morning person, right? I wouldn't get up real early in the morning because I never was. I was more of a night owl. But I said, you know what? What if I decide to adopt a new discipline? Couldn't I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning instead of 7:30? And if I got up at 5 o'clock in the morning, could I get my entire workout in and be showered and starting my day with my affirmations, everything else I do in the morning before my kids even wake up, before my wife is even out of bed? It was in my old sense of myself was, I don't do that because I'm not a morning person, which was another premise, right? Mm-hmm. Saying I'm not a morning person is a premise. It's a philosophical premise. And I had to say, well, maybe I can shift the premise, say I am a morning person. And it solves a conflict or a contradiction in my life that I can get things done and change. And literally, I started getting up at 5 a.m. and started to get my workouts in before the day starts. So I made sure that my health and fitness was taken care of, not when I can maybe hopefully catch some time later in the day, which never happened, but before the day even starts. So I had to transform a premise about myself because I had a value that wasn't being addressed without compromising or sacrificing other values. And what happened? I go to bed earlier, I get up earlier, and suddenly I shift my schedule. There's 168 hours in a week, folks. 168. Yep. If you slept 8 hours a night, you still have over 100 hours a week. And if you get disciplined about how to allocate those hours because you have values that you're saying I need to attend to, you will figure it out. So that's just one quick example.
I love it. I love it because awareness is strong enough to break a pattern. In that case, the awareness of doing the exercise, and she realized, that more like an old premise, and it's time to let it go. One of the things that I was talking...
You know what, can I make one more comment
about that? Please, yeah.
Not only that, but think about the power of this in its ripple effects. What do you think happens to my love relationship when I get in better shape?
Go better.
What do you think happens to my business when I'm exercising in the morning and and I've got I'm in better... What do you think happens to my energy level?
Go up.
How am I now at night when I'm putting my kids to bed and am I saying, no story tonight, Daddy's just too tired, or because I'm better shape, am I going to now read the story to my kids? You understand? It's not like, okay, well now my health and fitness is better. The ripple effects affect all the other important categories of my life. So you guys see the relationship between these things.
I love that. I love it. And one of the things too that I want to add to this conversation is that a lot of people think that to change a premise in your case that is impossible, or you think that a lot of people use as an identity statement, well, you know what, I am not a morning person, identity, therefore, hey, I'm biologically wired to be that way. And here's what I tell people is that, look, if you hold the meaning in your mind for 10, 20 years, the quote, you're not a morning person, right? Because that's the meaning, right? I'm not. Is it possible for you to hold in your mind a new premise that, you know what, I am a morning person because I work out, because that hour for me is going to improve everything else I do. Can you hold that new meaning in your mind? The answer is what? Of course you can, and you just
well, yeah.
prove it.
I talk about, and I'm working on a mini book right now. Maybe it'll be a full book, but this thing called The Power of Premise.
Okay.
And it starts with the premise: can somebody change their premise?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
my premise is change your premise and you change your life.
Yep.
And also from a business standpoint, it's not like all premises are just automatically right. As a matter of fact, many of them are wrong. And when businesses fail, many times it's not because of a lack of ability of the owner of the business or the managers of the business or any of those or the enthusiasm for the people in the business. They usually fail because they're starting with a bad premise. A very quick case in point is a business way back when that was looking to compete with McDonald's when McDonald's was on its meteoric rise. Their premise was, after doing their research, we're talking Harvard MBA, private equity people, I'm talking about like well-credentialed, extremely smart people.
Yep.
And they drew the conclusion that their premise was McDonald's is doing so great because people want fast food. And it was like the first fast food restaurant. So they said, we are going to now build a competitive business, and we're going to look to even deliver the food faster than McDonald's. And they created this business called Chutes, which they literally delivered the food through these pneumatic chutes that was faster than McDonald's. And these smart people, money people, Ivy League credentialed people, etc., who had amazing management experience and a good pedigree and resume, the business completely failed. Why? Because the premise was wrong. People didn't go to McDonald's primarily because the food was fast. They went there because they liked the taste of the food. Which, incidentally, I'm anti-McDonald's. But the point being is that you can have very smart people who operate from the wrong premise, and it causes failure. In your life right now, anybody who's watching this, you hold premises that could be completely inhibiting you from success, and sometimes you're not even conscious of the premise. And when you can identify those premises and change them, you change your life.
Love that. Love it. So what are some, let's go to the third-party interview here, some resources, people listen to you. Why do you recommend someone that's got excited about this conversation to take the next steps? Maybe some resources that you read, maybe some resources that your company offer us. What are three resources?
So there's a few things. The first thing I'll say is I've got a video that's a 45-minute video where I especially, I'm speaking to entrepreneurs, and I especially get into contradictions around money, which many people, I'm not trying not to self-aggrandize, but the feedback I get from this is that it's a complete life changer. It completely reframes. It's a premise shifter that is like an earthquake. And if you go to patrickonfire.com, it's free. I'm not telling you anything. So it's free. So if you go to patrickonfire.com, you can just basically put in your email address. We'll send you a link to the video. And if you watch, it's live. If you watch that 45 minutes in front of this group of about 400 high-performing entrepreneurs, I think that will take you deeper into the work that I'm talking about here. And so that would be one place just to say, specifically to get my ideas organized and presented. That's one way to do it. patrickonfire.com. I would also, for reading resources, maybe, I already mentioned Atlas Shrugged. If you're an entrepreneur of any variety, quite frankly, a human being, and you have not read that book, and it's a tree killer. I mean, it's 1,100 pages. And I've read it probably 10 times. It took me 4.5 months the first time to read it, and it's fine. Take your time with it. It's not to be rushed. But I recommend reading that book because it literally dramatizes the influence of philosophy. Now, you might agree or disagree with the philosophy of the author. That's kind of I don't want to say irrelevant, but an independent thing. The point is, look at how philosophy creates behavior and outcomes in society as a whole. I mean, when you start adopting premises, premises change the world. If there's a premise that says that your life can be sacrificed for the greater good, you end up in Stalin's Soviet Union. If you have a premise that says that every human being has a God-given right, inalienable rights to their own life, their own liberty, and their pursuit of happiness, you end up in a culture like the United States. So the idea being that premises are very, very, very powerful. So you can, in that book, I think, dramatizes that in a very profound way. In general, if you went to my holding company website, actually, I'd send you to my personal website. There's probably more stuff there. It's patrickgentempo.com. There's an opt-in there too. I send out blogs. I have thoughts. I'm always putting things out there. And incidentally, I never waste people. I never write for the sake of just because I have to write. I don't. Facebook. If you go to Patrick, align with Dr. Gentempo, that might even be a better place to go. Align with Dr. Gentempo, and you can opt in there. I don't ever say, "Hey, I'm at Starbucks now," or I only post. I only post when I feel like there's a thought that's worth sharing, and if not, I don't bore people with a bunch of stuff, and I don't feel compelled to have to put out content. It's just when there's quality there of some content that I think is worth sharing, I share it. So those would be some resources.
I appreciate Dr. Patrick. Thanks so much for supporting our community here, for sharing a message, man, and thanks so much for everything we do for chiropractors and for business entrepreneurs like myself. So appreciate that.
Well, thank you, Roberto, and thank you for all the wonderful feedback you've given me on my presenting, which is a major part of what I do, which is absolutely upgraded my presentation. So I appreciate what you're doing and personally the help that you've given me.
Thanks so much, bud. All right, take care. Bye-bye. Make sure you go to, I'm going to put a list here, the links, so you guys can check it out. Dr. Patrick Gentempo. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Take care, everybody.